Welcome to Precept Steps, Sabbath, February 7, 2026. Precept Steps, where we endeavor to become Torah scholars and to diligently seek Yahweh's precepts, Yahweh's mitzvot, Yahweh's ways. This Torah portion is called Yitro, or Jethro, and it's because the Torah portion opens with Jethro coming to visit Moshe. It covers Exodus 18:1 through 20:23. So we start out with Yitro, or Jethro, Moshe's father-in-law. Remember, he married Yitro's daughter Zipporah before he went back to Egypt, and all the plagues happened and all of that. So Jethro comes to him, and they have some interactions. And one of the things that happens while Jethro is there is he sees that Moshe is sitting down to judge the people. So the way the legal system worked with the children of Israel at this time was that if they had a dispute with each other, there were certain times that they would bring this dispute before Moses, and Moses would decide who was right and instruct them as to the way that God wanted things done. And this got to be a big deal because there was a lot of people, and apparently they would really like to argue. So Moshe would sit all day long listening to the various problems that they were having. And when Jethro saw this, he's like, Moses, you got to do something different. That was good advice. And from this good advice, we start to understand some of the structure, the hierarchy that God feels is the best system to govern people from what happens here. So what Moshe does is he gives some of his authority to some elders in the tribes, and it goes on down, and they are to hear the arguments. And if they can't settle the argument, it goes up to the next person. And then if they can't settle it, it goes up to the next person. And if it finally gets to the elder, the highest elder in the tribe, and he can't settle it, then they bring the problems before Moshe. We have a very similar system here in the United States with our court system. There are courts at the county level, and then there's courts at the state level, and there's courts at the federal level. And then if they can't solve this problem, it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, which is the highest justice system in our culture and our way of governing. The central focus, though, of this Torah portion is they are now at the foot of Mount Sinai. They have made the journey from Egypt to Sinai, and this is the same mountain where we saw the burning bush. Okay, and Yahweh says to Moshe, I'm gonna bring you back to this mountain. After I set the people free, I'm going to bring you back here because there's some stuff we need to do. And so he gives instructions. He says, I'm going to descend on the mountain, and you need to keep the people away. You need to set up a barrier. Nobody can touch the mountain. Animals can't go up on the mountain. It's very important that you come and you listen and you observe, but you don't get too close. And he also gave them some instructions about how to prepare themselves. They were to take baths. They were to wash their clothes. They were to get ready for Yahweh to descend upon the mountain. And then in chapter 19 and verse 16, it says, on the morning of the third day, so he gave them 3 days to get ready. 3 days, get prepared. Take your baths, wash your clothes. On the third day, there was thunder, lightning, and a thick cloud on the mountain. Then a shofar blast sounded so loudly that all the people in the camp trembled. Now think about when you come to Sabbath at Goshen Acres, we have a lot of shofars that blow at the beginning of the service, right? And that's really loud. I'm thinking that was nothing compared to what these people heard. Can you imagine a heavenly shofar sounding, and all of this lightning and thunder and thick cloud? And there's another verse that says there was fire on the mountain. This was a sight to behold. I think I'd be trembling too. But it says in particular that the shofar blast made the people tremble. So the next time you're listening to the shofar, see if there isn't a stirring that you feel. That if it was a lot louder, maybe you would also tremble. There's something special about the shofar blast. Then we get to Exodus chapter 20. And the first verse of that chapter says, "Then God said all these words." And what's going to follow is what we commonly refer to as the 10 Commandments. But that's not what God said. He didn't say, here are 10 commandments. He didn't even say here are 10 laws. He said 10 words. And the Hebrew word there is dabar. And you see the Hebrew. Hopefully by now you know that that's a dalet and a bet. And the last letter is a resh, which we haven't studied yet. So if you didn't know that one, that was okay. But it's important for us to start reviewing these letters that we have learned and see if we can recognize them as we go along. Now, as we go along through these 10 words, I want to point out before we start that they might not be quite in the same order as you may have learned them. I'm presenting a slightly different order. It has a more perspective from Judah. And I'm also going to point out at the beginning of this, we're going to have a Hebrew letter. Because remember, when we study the Hebrew letters, we also study that they have a numeric value. So this letter, you should know it. It's Aleph, and it has a numerical value of 1. All right. So word or command number 1, I am Adonai your God. Now we've heard this before. We've heard this I am before, right? It's what God said to Moshe from the burning bush. He said, I am that I am. Right, so he's reminding Moshe and the people that I'm the same God. I'm the same God that sent Moshe to you. I am the same God who brought all of the plagues, and I am Adonai, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the abode of slavery. If you look at the Hebrew, it is I am Yahweh Elohim, Adonai your God. So that's the first word he wants them to know. He wants them to know who he is. He's reminding them of who he is and what he has done for them. Word number 2, right here. This is a bait. It has a value of 2. Should know that one. If it had a dot in the middle, it would be a vet, right? It's a bet. You are to have no other gods before me. You are not to make for yourselves a carved image. You are not to bow down to them or serve them. For I, Adonai your God, Yahweh Elohim, am a jealous God. All right. Now remember, people have just left Egypt. What have they been doing for 400 years? They've been at least looking at and maybe even involved in worshiping the gods of Egypt. We talked about some of those gods, right? That the plagues were directed against the gods. Remember that from last teaching? Okay. So he's like, look, we're not doing that anymore. If you've got any of these gods with you, you need to get rid of them. And we're not going to make any more. All right. I have appeared to you on this mountain in fire and cloud. You saw no form. You only heard a voice. I don't want you making images that represent me. They don't. That's not how I come to you. Word number 3. This is a gimel. Remember gimel? It has a numerical value of 3. It says, you are not to use lightly the name of Adonai, your God, Yahweh Elohim, because Yahweh will not leave unpunished someone who uses his name lightly. Okay, so what does this mean? You know, some people like to say this command means that you shouldn't curse, and you shouldn't. It probably does mean you shouldn't curse, at least while he's not using God's name. But there are words that are, not great to say, and your mom and dad probably say, don't say that, and that's fine. But it's probably not what this word or this command is actually addressing. For a long time, and still today in Orthodox Judaism, they do not allow people to say the name of God. They do not allow people to say Yahweh. In fact, they kept the pronunciation of Yod-He Vav-He hidden for a very long time. And honestly, there's still a lot of debate now because it's been so long since anybody uttered his name that we're not exactly sure of the pronunciation. Some people say Yahweh. Some people say Yehovah. And it's because we don't know for sure. Now, there are scholars out there that will argue with me and say that they do know for sure, and maybe they do. I don't know. I'm just saying there still remains a debate. However, since we have begun to pronounce the name, or at least attempting to, with it comes the admonition to be very, very, very careful. This name is holy. This name is sacred. This name must be used with great care because it is the name of our God. You know, some people say God is God's name. No, that's not his name. That's his title. All right. It's like your dad has a name. My dad's name was Charles, and that was his name. But father was his title in my life. Okay, kind of like that. The admonition of this word, of this command, is to be careful how we use the name of our God. And it's very, very solemn. This is the only command of the 10 words where Adonai says, you're going to get punished if you don't use it right. Okay? He doesn't really say that with any other commands, that there's going to be a punishment. So I think he's just trying to get us to understand that this is very serious, and we need to take it that way. But you shouldn't be worried that you are breaking this command, but by saying words that are maybe not great, but have nothing to do with his name. Like shut up. Probably shouldn't say that. That's probably not a nice thing to say, but it doesn't have anything to do with this command. The fourth word starts with a dalet, which is right here. Had a little trouble getting my pen. There it is. Okay. Here's the dalet. Has a numerical value of 4. And this commandment has to do with the day that we keep called the Shabbat. How many times have you come to Goshen Acres and had somebody say, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom? Well, that is Sabbath peace. And I thought you might like to see the Hebrew letters. Notice that both of them start with this letter, and that's the SH sound. So this is the sh, ba, shalom. Okay. And you should know this letter. This is a bet. Okay. And a tav. And you haven't learned this letter yet. Oh, no, maybe we did learn. No, not yet. Lamed. Okay. So there's some Hebrew letters. Some of them you know, some of them you don't, and that's okay. The word or the command says, remember the day, Shabbat, to set it apart for God. Right? So we come to Goshen Acres, or maybe if you're staying home with your family, maybe you listen to something online, but it's a different. It needs to be different from every other day. And Yahweh says you have 6 days to labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Shabbat, a day of rest. That's what Shabbat means, to rest, for Adonai your God. On it, you are not to do any kind of work, for in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth, but on the 7th day he rested. This is why Adonai blessed the day, Shabbat, the 7th day, and separated it for himself. It's a very important command. It's very important, when God sets the example for us himself. If you remember in the creation story, and it says it again here, that Yahweh rested on the 7th day. Do you think Yahweh rested because he was tired? I don't think so. There's many verses in the scriptures that says he doesn't get tired. No. He was setting an example for us to do as he does. 7th day rest is very, very important for us. It's very important for us to stop working. And it is our day to focus on Yahweh and what he wants us to know, and to worship him, and to sing praises to his name. Remember, this isn't a new command. Did you notice that? He says, remember the day. Maybe he said, remember it because they forgot it. We talked about this a little bit in our last session together, but let's talk about it again. Children of Israel, they've been in slavery for a long time. Do slaves get a rest? Do you think the Egyptians gave them the Sabbath off? I don't think so. So God is coming back to them and he's saying, remember what you've forgotten. You used to keep the Sabbath. Your people, your forefather Abraham, they used to keep the Sabbath before you came down here to Egypt and became slaves. You need to remember. You need to remember the Sabbath. You need to remember who you are. And that's part of Sabbath too. When God created us, he said he created humans being, not humans doing. Let that sink in just a little bit. Human beings, not human doings. And once a week, one day a week, Yahweh wants us to remember. It's not about what we do. It's about who he created us to be. Now we come to word or command 5. And remember, number 5 is the letter Hey. And it says, honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land which Adonai, your God, is giving you. Means you show respect for your mother and your father. And this includes grandma and grandpa too. This refers to family members who are in authority over you, who lived before you. Right? And part of this is also not only to obey and respect them, but also to take care of them as they enter their aged years, and they maybe need some help or maybe financial support. The important thing to see here is that Yahweh is talking about the family unit, mothers, fathers, children. And he's saying, this family unit, I designed this. This is the way it's supposed to work. Yes, your mother and father have authority over you, and you are to obey them and show them respect and show them honor, which also means that you don't do things that brings dishonor upon them. You don't go out and be naughty, because not only does that bring problems for you, but it also brings dishonor on your parents. So Yahweh says you need to honor mom and dad. Oh, that means obey them now and take care of them later. Okay. Word number 6. This is a vav, and that has the numerical value of 6. And it's a pretty straightforward word. Do not murder. Now, this does get confusing for some people sometimes, because sometimes it's translated do not kill. And then people say that, well, God's violating his own commandment, because he later on in the conquest of the land of Canaan, God sends the children of Israel into battle, and he says, kill everybody. All right. So if the command is really do not kill, then God would be violating his own command, and we know that's not possible. If you look carefully at the Hebrew word, it's more accurately interpreted as do not murder. Do not kill someone with hatred in your heart. Do not plan to kill them because of revenge or jealousy or, some other problem. It doesn't mean that a life is never taken, although a life is not taken, rarely taken by an individual. Self-defense is allowed. If a person has a murderous intent towards you and you end up killing him, defending yourself, that is not murder. All right. And as we work through the rest of the law, we're going to see that there are times when there's a penalty for the crime, and the penalty is that the community of Israel will stone that person to death. Again, God would be telling the people to violate his own command if this was do not kill. So we have to understand there's a difference between killing, as in ending a life, and murder. Murder is with evil intent. I'm going to do it because I hate them. I'm going to do it because I want what they have. I want to take, their house or their money. Okay? Do not murder. Word number 7 with the Zion. I'm getting a delay, so I'm having a hard time draw. Okay. The Zion has a numerical value of 7. The 7th command is do not commit adultery. This is more of God speaking to how he wants the family structure to be. Now, when a man and a woman get married, they make vows. They make a covenant with each other, and they are to only be with each other, and then build their family, have children, and build their family. And God's saying, don't let somebody else come in and be part of that. You are a unit onto yourself. Doesn't mean you can't have friends, but there shouldn't be anyone coming into that relationship that would break that relationship apart. Take care of your marriage vows. Take care of your marriage covenant. Keep it separate. Keep it pure. Be just with each other. Word number 8 is pretty straightforward. And the Hebrew letter that has a numerical value of 8 is a het. And it is do not steal. Now, that's pretty easy. We all know what that is. That's when you take something that does not belong to you. And we got a little guy here is trying to steal a truck under his shirt. I think somebody might notice that. Okay. But this is a pretty easy, pretty straightforward commandment. Don't take stuff that doesn't belong to you. And just because it's easy doesn't mean it's important. It's very important, and it's getting more and more difficult to understand what stealing actually is as our society becomes more technological, if you will. For example, copying music that you didn't buy. Is that stealing? I'll let you ask your mom and dad about that. Word or command number 9. This is the letter het, and it has a numerical value of 9. And it says, do not give false evidence against your neighbor. Now, again, there are some people will interpret this as do not lie. And that's not a terrible interpretation. It is important to be honest. It is important not to lie. There are times, however, where you might not tell the complete truth, perhaps to spare somebody's feelings, for instance. This command, however, says do not give false evidence against your neighbor. The intent of this in the Hebrew is you don't go to court and say something that isn't true. You don't go to a court of law and say something that's untrue about somebody. You testify honestly. Now, it is a good premise in all things to be honest, to tell the truth. When your mom and dad ask you a question, do you think God wants you to tell them the truth? You bet he does. You bet he does. So don't think I'm letting you off the hook here. But the main focus of this command is don't tell lies in a court of law. And this is where, and I guess they don't do it anymore. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong about that. But at leastwise, it used to be they would take a Bible into the court and they would have the witness put his hand on the Bible and he would swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And then he would add, so help me God, as a reminder of this very thing, of this very command, that we are to tell the truth, especially in a court of law. And that brings us to word 10. And the little tiny yod, it's right here, has the numerical value of 10. And this word, this command says, do not covet your neighbor's house. Do not covet your neighbor's wife, his male or female slave, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. So I got a couple of pictures there where people, look like they might be coveting. The guy there with the fish, he's got a few little fish in his basket, and he sees this other guy's got this great big fish that he got. And maybe he's thinking, that's a lot better than my little basket of fish. I maybe will take that away from him. All right. In the other picture, we see a young man, and he looks like he might be jealous that this young lady has won a trophy. And he's like, man, that trophy should have been mine. And he's jealous. He's and it's okay to wish, like in an athletic contest, to wish that you had done better. But if you feel anger or resentment towards the person that won, then you're getting into this command. You are coveting their position. You are coveting their accomplishment. When you look at somebody else's stuff and you want it so badly that you're tempted to steal or or act mean towards that person because they have something that you don't, then you're violating this command. This command is don't look around you, be happy, be satisfied, be content with what God has provided for you. And don't be comparing yourself to other people's stuff. Because when you start doing that, then that leads to other sins like stealing or being mean and angry. Right? We would do well to remember this also with people's positions or accomplishments. You look at them and you say, well, I could be a better leader than them, or I could be a better speaker than them, or I could be a better singer than them. You see, this leads to bitterness and division in the body of Yeshua, and we don't want that. And that finishes our Torah portion. Hope you have a little bit more of appreciation for the 10 words now. And just whenever you're thinking about them, try to imagine the voice of God actually speaking these words from Mount Sinai with lightning and thunder and fire. I'm sure that the people of Israel standing there at the base of the mountain took all of this very seriously, as we should also. So as always, Miss Kathy has prepared some activities for you. I know you're probably listening to this online, but whenever you make it to Goshen Acres, make sure you check out the table and talk to Miss Kathy and get the pages that perhaps you're missing and would like to have. Thank you for joining me for Precept Steps.